When the first aircraft left General Dynamics' Fort Worth, Texas facility, it was regarded as the greatest single step forward in combat aviation in several decades. It was the pioneering airplane of its class, which explains why a total of 1,700 of these 50-ton heavy planes were anticipated to be purchased by the Air Force and the Navy. The aircraft was none other than the F-111. In this video, we'll examine the many ways in which the F-111 fighter bomber manufactured by U.S. General Dynamics is worse than the F-35. Both the F-35 and the F-111 will be compared side by side in this video. Make sure you remain with us until the very end so that we can investigate the reasons why it was the worst airplane of its time. The F-111, famously known as the Aardvark, produced by General Dynamics, is a retired supersonic medium-range multi-role fighter. It had multiple roles, including ground attacks, strategic bombing, nuclear weapon capabilities, reconnaissance, and electronic warfare. The F-111 had been developed in the 1960s and first saw active service with the U.S. Air Force in 1967. The F-111C variant also entered service with the Australian Air Force in 1973. In the late 90s, the head of the U.S. Air Force at the time had expressed interest in creating a lightweight, low-cost fighter in order to replace the aging fleet of F-16s, and the result was the F-35. The F-35 is a single-pilot, single-engine, stealthy, multi-role fighter plane designed for air superiority and strike operations. It also has the ability to engage in electronic warfare and perform ISR operations. There are 3 different versions of the F-35. The F-35A is a standard takeoff and landing aircraft that is operated by the U.S. Air Force. The U.S. Marine Corps is able to take advantage of the short takeoff and vertical landing capabilities of the F-35B, while the F-35C was developed specifically for use on aircraft carriers and is currently in service with the U.S. Navy. The F-35 made its maiden flight in 2006 and entered service for the first time in July 2015 with the U.S. Marine Corps. This was followed by the United States Air Force in August 2016 and the United States Navy in February 2019. The Israeli Air Force was the first to employ the aircraft in actual combat in the year 2018. By 2044, the U.S. intends to purchase a total of 2,456 F-35s, but the warplane has ended up causing the same issue it was intended to eliminate, because the F-35 is pricey, with a per-aircraft price tag of roughly $100 million, including the cost of the engine. And while it is stealthy and packed with high-tech sensors, it's still unstable and unreliable. The overall F-35 fleet had an average full mission capability rate of 39% in the year 2020, which is an increase from the 32% rate recorded in the previous year. The F-35A variant of the aircraft, owned by the United States Air Force, had the best performance that year with a fleet average of 54%. However, this rate of performance is still a long way off from the 80% mission capable rate that is required for an efficient aircraft fleet. Also, the fleet of F-35Bs used by the Marine Corps is designed for vertical takeoff and landing, and the fleet of F-35Cs used by the Navy, which are optimized for deployment on aircraft carriers, both are far behind. Between 2019 and 2020, the percentage of the F-35B fleet that was fully capable of completing its missions dropped from 23% to 15%. During that time span, the F-35C fleet demonstrated some signs of progress, but it still was not enough. Other than the mission capability problems, the availability of spare parts has also been a major concern since the beginning of the F-35 program. The reasons for the unavailability of spare parts are a lack of spare inventory and restricted component-level depot repair capabilities. Also, spare parts for the F-35 are in short supply because the military is purchasing new planes at an extraordinary pace. Second, the F-35 program as a whole is dependent on a complex global spares pool model that forces F-35 operators in different regions of the world to battle it out for the limited supply of replacements. Because of these reasons, multiple partner nations who had previously committed to buying F-35 aircraft have changed their orders to be placed with other types of aircraft. The United States Air Force, or USAF, continues to declare that it will purchase 1,763 aircraft, despite the fact that the prospects of it really doing so are becoming increasingly doubtful. It's believed by some aircraft experts that the F-111 is the F-35 of its time, but the majority are of the opinion that the F-111 fighter bomber is worse than the F-35. The F-111 was given the official name Aardvark, but the Royal Australian Air Force, or RAAF, liked to call her the Pig, which was not actually an insult, it was because of its shape. Robert McNamara, then the Secretary of Defense, was responsible for kicking off the Tactical Fighter Experimental Program in 1961. He hoped that the resulting aircraft would be able to fulfill the requirements of both the United States Air Force and the Navy. In 1963, the delivery of 24 F-111As was to the Australian Armed Forces. At the time, this was one of the most cutting-edge airplane designs in the world. It wasn't until 1973 that they were finally completely integrated into the Royal Australian Air Force, since the procedure was held up by technical concerns. And most concerning of all, the price of the item continued climbing higher and higher. Based on the initial estimation of $100 million in 1963, the cost increased to between $142 and $205 million in 1966, $237 million in 1967, $266 million in 1968, and $300 million in 1969. By the time the year 1969 came to a close, the Australian government had already contributed $210 million. The first flight of a General Dynamics F-111 Aardvark took place on December 21, 1964, and the aircraft was accepted into service with the United States Air Force for the first time on July 18, 1967. General Dynamics installed a variable geometry swing wing on the F-111 in order to achieve the goal of creating a single supersonic aircraft that is capable of both flying low with agility for ground attacks and flying high and slow for fleet defense, with occasional outbursts of increased speed. The F-111 had insufficient power from the start, while the multifunction avionics of the aircraft were already difficult to use and, as a consequence, unreliable. The complicated and heavy wing system made both of these issues considerably worse by adding more weight and complexity to an already unreliable design. The close air support requirement was removed from the mission by the U.S. Air Force. As soon as the Navy saw how slow the jet was, they withdrew their participation from the program totally. In the end, the U.S. Air Force purchased approximately 550 F-111 aircraft to be used solely for long-range ground attack operations. The F-111 had a long career in the Air Force as a strike and electronic warfare jet, lasting from the 1960s until 1998. However, the jet did not perform as well as McNamara had claimed. It also wasn't inexpensive. McNamara was wrong in his estimate, and the actual cost per unit was 5 times higher. There were a total of 563 F-111s manufactured, but only about 43 of them survive today. One of the F-111s that survived Operation Desert Storm can be seen at the National Museum of the United States Air Force at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base located in Ohio. General Dynamics created the F-111, but it rather turned out a failure because of its high cost, shortage of spare parts, and expensive maintenance. Do you think the F-111 was a jack of all trades but master of none? If you like this video, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to our channel for everyday military updates. Don't forget to leave a comment in the section below. Thanks for watching.